Please welcome our panelists. Max Tegmark, professor at the MIT Department of Physics and Center for Brains, Minds, and Machines. Ayah Bdeir, the founder and CEO of Little Bits. Natalya Bailey, CEO and co-founder of Axion Systems. And our moderator, Gideon Lichfield.
Again. So, in the last panel, we talked about the role of fiction and future thinking in imagination, in thinking about how the world could be a better place thanks to technology. And in this panel, we're going to talk about the work that each of you is doing in Natalya in creating propulsion systems for the future, Ayah in educating and preparing a new generation of people to live and work with technology, and Max on your work on AI. But I want to start with Max because the question, the kind of the overall question that I want us to try to get at is technologies obviously can be used for very inspirational things and they can be used for harmful effects as well. And with AI in particular, AI is that technology which is becoming so broad, so applicable to so many things, and is so much a bogeyman in many ways. But Max, you think a lot about, specifically about how to put technology to beneficial uses. So when you're working on AI research, how are you thinking about the fact that it can be used for many different purposes by different people with different motives? How do you work, how can AI researchers and how does the field work on it in such a way as to make the beneficial outcomes more likely to happen?
Great questions. I think I should say something about how AI is similar to all other technology and then something about how it's different. It's similar in that all technology, no technology is evil or morally good. Technology is always a tool, right? You can use biology for new ways of curing diseases or for making biological weapons. In the same way, of course, you can use AI to do all sorts of wonderful things, help figure out how to cure cancer faster, or you can use it to build lethal autonomous weapons or to manipulate people with Cambridge Analytica. And so the message we've learned from biology is very clear, which is that the way to get the benefits is to have a positive vision for what you want to do with it, and then draw a clear red line between acceptable and unacceptable uses. Biologists are really great at this. We got the international ban on bioweapons. You know, raise your hand if you read an article about bioterrorism recently or bioweapon attack. Are you sure you're not confusing it with chemical? Yeah. And so it's basically a force for good in the world. And in the same way, this is what we have to do when we work on AI. Where do we want to draw that line? This year, the United Nations is discussing, should there be some sort of ban on lethal autonomous weapons? There's a lot of discussion about privacy and bias and things like that. We need to keep that. And then where is AI different from these other sciences, like physics and chemistry and so on? It's different in that AI will ultimately, if it succeeds, become the most powerful technology ever, because all the other technologies were created with intelligence, in that case, human intelligence, right? And if we can amplify our intelligence with machine intelligence and use it to ultimately invent all the other technologies faster, then this is why this is, out of all the technologies, the one where it's most important to get it right. Draw that line, don't do the bad stuff, and steer it to really good uses so it becomes the best thing ever to happen.
So how do we make sure that people don't do the bad stuff? Is that up to technologists?
No, I mean, first of all, technologists, just because I'm a nerd who knows how to work with deep neural networks does not mean I'm some sort of expert on human flourishing or human behavior. That's why we have to broaden this conversation so everybody gets into it. If otherwise, we know how all the important decisions on the future of AI will be made, right? In some back room by some people who've had too much Red Bull to drink and don't necessarily have either the best interests or even the wisdom to make those decisions on behalf of all of humanity, right?
So I'm interested in your perspective on this because you are first of all, you're trying to broaden the range of the kinds of people who are getting into technology, specifically, so it's not just guys with Red Bull in back rooms building things. And you're also, you'll tell us about the work that you're doing, but you're educating people at a very early stage in their interaction with technology and with the concepts around it. So how do you think that specifically the kind of work that you do can contribute towards technology development that is more thoughtful and conscientious and beneficial?
Well, I'm glad
that's a question for Ayah.
Perfect. Answer it for us. It's a tough one.
Well, you should talk about what I do. I'm interested to hear. So we, well, first of all, Little Bits, I'll just give background on what we do. So Little Bits is, we're an education technology company. Our mission is to inspire kids to be inventors and creators, and to love STEM and STEAM and feel like they can be creative with it. The underlying technology is a system of electronic building blocks, so pieces of electronics that snap with magnets to allow you to create any invention that comes to mind using electronics and mechanics and coding and all sorts of things in a very easy and playful way. The reason we do what we do is because we believe that some of the things that you're mentioning, kind of dangers of technology or needing to sort of use technology for good, are things you can tackle early on through education. I believe the two big kind of pillars are first making sure that kids understand technology, and the second pillar that they feel like they can be creative with it. So in terms of understand technology, for many decades, technology was a field of study. You could study technology or you could not. We can't afford to think like that anymore. Technology governs everything we do. It's how we eat, it's how we sleep, it's how we move, it's how our data is stored, it's how we travel. And it's a question of literacy. Kids have to understand how technology works. They have to understand how they're communicating with it, how it's manipulating their information, and when they're literate, they're able to have agency over it.
Right. So in other words, this is more about much more than just learning how to make technology. It's also understanding how to interact with it in your life.
Just understand it. So for example, when the Internet of Things became a thing, we made smart home kits so that kids could understand what the Internet of Things meant, and so that they can make their own nest, but also understand what it means. Or when the space race became a thing, we made kits to allow kids to understand what the Mars rover was doing on Mars or how it operated, just to understand some of the technologies of the day. And then the second piece is around creating with technology. Right now, as Max said, the most technology in the world is made in back rooms by guys drinking Red Bull. I mean, Red Bull, I don't know. But it's true. It's in the hands of experts. It's in the hands of a very small elite, often group of people that are not very diverse. And the second thing that we have to do is make sure that technology creators represent the world that they are serving. So more women in technology, more minorities in technology, more kids with different learning abilities and different kind of learning styles. That's something that we think is very important. So we focus very much on it. So we make sure that our community is as close as possible to half girls, which is something that's a very deliberate work. We make sure that we're trying to address kids that have different styles of communicating or learning, because if they can see themselves as technology creators and as able to be creative with technology, then they, again, have this ability to have agency and participate in the world that they're going to live in.
Right. So there's a certain, I'm going to do a slightly awkward segue here. There's a certain democratization aspect of what you're doing. You're trying to make technology understandable and accessible and put it in the hands of more people. So Natalya, you're also trying to democratize a certain kind of technology, which is access to space. Tell us why you feel that was important, how you got into that.
So I got into this field because as a kid I really liked aliens and math and combined the two and ended up in aerospace engineering.
Aliens plus math equals aerospace, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I took a college course on in-space propulsion, so that these are the technologies for spacecraft that are already in orbit, not launch, but how they maneuver around once they're already in space. And I learned that there was a particular area of ion engines that was not very well understood. So I narrowed in on that, and I think everybody probably has an inner rocket scientist in them somewhere. But so I narrowed in on that as what I wanted to study, and it felt like it was both pushing the boundary of this particular technology forward, but also through ion engines and space exploration, I could also have, be a part of pushing our understanding of the universe forward. So that was a pretty powerful combination for me and kept me on this path. So then I was here doing my PhD in the Space Propulsion Lab, working on a new type of ion engine that could actually operate very efficiently on smaller scales. And meanwhile, outside the walls of the school, the whole space industry there's actually a new space industry that was growing up around smaller spacecraft that are more affordable. And because they're more affordable, I mean, more organizations, more countries, more people can utilize spacecraft now than ever before. And this has been going on for the past 15, 20 years. So got a lot of interest in our particular technology. It can help enable these satellites to perform their missions. Just because they're small doesn't mean they don't require some sophisticated systems on board. So I spun the technology out to do that, help enable small satellites. I'll come back to the democratization. Some of the things that these satellites are doing, companies like Amazon and SpaceX are talking about launching thousands to 10,000 of these smaller spacecraft to connect everybody on the globe. I think they'll first start with connecting cruise ships and airplanes to the internet. Anyways, but eventually, I think everybody around the world, even in hard-to-reach places, will finally have access to the internet and to education and medical resources and so on. So that's extremely exciting and a huge opportunity. And then in the future, building more affordable spacecraft that can also do space science and interplanetary exploration. That's also on our roadmap, and bringing new countries online with more affordable spacecraft so that everyone can kind of participate in paving the way and making progress.
Right. So there's a question that kind of, I think, applies to all three of you, which is, we've seen a lot of democratization of technology over the last couple of decades. And in particular, I'm thinking of, the internet and social media democratizing the ability to broadcast information, to connect with people. And that hasn't necessarily been an entirely good thing all the time. And so I think there's a worry now with any sort of technology that's being democratized, whether it's access to space or whether it is the use of AI, which is becoming also increasingly a tool that anybody can have access to and can use, it's essentially that same question of how do we make sure that more people are using it for beneficial ends than for harmful ends? Is democratization of it dangerous, in other words?
Well, of course, if I went and said to my department chair that I want to start messing around with plutonium in my office here at MIT, I would probably not be told that, yes, that's great, let's democratize plutonium access to everybody. We also don't want to democratize access to smallpox virus, or smallpox, or ability to make designer pandemics and so on. It's just the nature of technology. As we said earlier, it's not evil, it's not good, it's a tool. You don't go into a kindergarten and say, let's democratize chainsaws and give each kid here one to play with. The way I see it, the way to get a good future with powerful tech is to make sure we just win the wisdom race between the growing power of the tech and the wisdom with which we manage it, right? So
yeah,
you have to always make sure that you only give full access to it to those who have the wisdom and so on to use it wisely, and which might not include kids and chainsaws or everybody in plutonium,
But how do you control access to something like AI?
Well, very good question. In the case of nuclear weapons, it was easy because there happened to be some ingredients like plutonium, which are easy to control. With something like bioweapons, it was harder, actually, but we've done a pretty good job, mainly by creating a stigma and more controlling the people who work in the key facilities. I think it can be done with any tech. With AI is tricky because it's so dual use, so you probably want to focus less on
also because
on the hardware and more on the most important thing of all, I think, is to have a clear stigma, first of all, so that we as a society agree on what's acceptable use and not acceptable. And I mean, it's kind of interesting if you look at what is it really that, say, suppose I really wanted to do a startup company in Cambridge here and build bioweapons, right? Mm-hmm. What is it that prevents me the most? It's really the stigma. If I go ask each one of you guys in the coffee break after this, if you want to come work for me, I'll double your salary, you know. I'll ask every single bio PhD here at MIT. They're all going to say no, because we have managed to create such a powerful norm in society that that's not okay, that even things which are not strictly illegal, right, people aren't going to want to do, private companies aren't going to invest in them. If someone is secretly doing it, a whistleblower will rat them out, and so on. That has to be the first step, I think, before you start obsessing too much about exactly how much you can do with best practices, how much you need hard law for. But if we can first agree on, you know, where the line should be drawn, I'm confident we can do the rest. And that's what we're grappling with today, though.
I have a very different perspective. So I think even many people that work in the weapon industry think that they're doing good. I think people find ways to rationalize what they're doing, and I don't believe in there being a body that says this is good and this is not good. I think that rather than thinking about how to control access or create stigma around a technology, similar to the previous panelist that says, like, capitalism is not good or bad, it's just an economic system of economy. Technology is not good or bad, it's just a system of communication and media and et cetera. I think that we should drive with inspiration. What is the potential of technology? What could it do? I find I spend a lot of time with kids. Our focus is very much kids, maybe 8 to 12, 8 to 14. We spend a lot of time with them, and they're incredibly inspiring, and they're incredibly motivated to do social good, and they're incredibly excited about solving problems around them, and they just want to be told that they can, and they just want to be given tools to do it. We developed something called invention-based learning, which is a riff off of project-based learning, so that it's around inventions that are meaningful to you. In fact, yesterday I visited a school here in Cambridge, Putnam Avenue public school, that had a program called Design Thinking for Social Change, where kids were basically picking problems in their communities and inventing solutions for them. So there was one group that was creating this contraption with like a water bottle and an upside down system that had these ice cubes that would start dropping, and a time-lapse camera that would take photographs periodically to show what would happen to Cambridge in the next decade if climate change is not mitigated. Another pair of kids were doing a project to help promote understanding of the Muslim community. They created this flag system that had an automatic pulley, and every time somebody put a piece of paper in that said, "I support Muslims," the flag starts rising automatically. So these are the solutions that are, you know, physical, digital, human, that kind of bring together solutions to problems that they're seeing. And I think that's sort of how you inspire social good. Like there's a huge push around STEM and learning the code, and everybody thinks that if you get more kids learning the code, the solution is going to happen. But we're not going to code our way out of climate change. We're not going to code our way out of shortage of water. You need to invent in the physical world, in the digital world. You need the community, and more than anything, you need inspiration to tie it all together.
Right, so community is really important.
If I may, I'm so glad you said that, because I think the perspective you gave, that we really need a positive vision for good uses of technology, and what I said, that we need to clearly stigmatize bad uses of technology, I don't think it's either that your perspective or my perspective. I think we need both of those perspectives. That's how we really win. If nobody's going to go along with any kind of restrictions if they can't see what you gain from it, But that's exactly the lesson I think we learned from, for example, biology, right? There was so much of a positive vision for all the great things you could do by helping people live longer and healthier lives. And people realized that we're only going to get these benefits if we can also behave ourselves and not do the stupid stuff. And in the same way, I think if you get kids to realize how much wonderful stuff you can do with technology, if you make sure, then they will realize we don't want all these opportunities to get squandered because somehow the whole technology gets hijacked and there's a huge backlash.
But I think what you said about community is important, because I think communities identify needs, and then through identifying needs create solutions, and so they drive the inspiration for people to build solutions. So maybe that also ties into some of the things you're thinking about, Natalya. But what's your vision for 10 years or 100 years from now of how communities of people with access to space might transform it?
Yeah, so it feels like AI and then I'm the space person.
Well, it's all a technology continuum.
Yeah, well, so I talked about in the kind of near term opening up access to space, connecting everybody on the globe and providing more data about the planet that can be actionable and used to kind of improve the human condition around the world. And then in the longer term, generating new knowledge about the universe, which ultimately I think is kind of the whole point. So there's that, but then in my day job, I'm at work trying to get a group of people together to like help carry us towards those visions. And so what I spend a lot of time thinking about is how do I create a culture that on the one hand is like a brain trust of really smart PhDs and engineers and scientists, but at the same time is built around like trust and respect, and I might get some backlash for saying this, but almost a combination of like a SpaceX type culture and a Patagonia or something. I don't think we have to have
the backlash.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I have the microphone right now, so I'll just keep talking. But so I spend a lot of time thinking about how can we do that? How do you create a safe place to take risks and to be creative and take those leaps? And the other piece I think that's really important that Ayah just sort of touched on is related to computer science and programming. I think what we need to be creating are generations of lifelong learners, and we don't know what the problems are going to be in the next 100 years from now, but we do know that we need to teach people how to solve them, and I think that will start like seeing new change will start happening more and more rapidly, and there will be more competition for talent and technology. So how do we build that into the education system and things like that?
Right. What are some problems that you might imagine people trying to solve using access to space?
Well, here at MIT, Danielle Wood is working on predicting malaria outbreaks using various pieces of data from satellites. I'm really excited and can't even imagine the impact this will have on the world when everybody's actually connected to the internet. I think we'll have our issues, but I think that will be just a tremendous thing for the whole world. The LIGO researchers just built an app so everybody can look at the latest gravitational wave data on your phone and help point out things that might have been signals. So there are all sorts of opportunities for citizen space science.
Mm-hmm. Max, what are you inspired by in terms of people, citizen AI science, if you like?
I'm inspired by the amazing opportunities that present themselves when you put together what the three of us have been talking about here. When my parents were young, nobody had ever been to space, right? And here you are being so matter-of-fact about it and making it sound so easy. When
I've applied
back
twice.
not long ago, there was technology so advanced that even the world's best scientists didn't know about it yet because it didn't exist. Now you're teaching it to the kids, right? That's amazing. And in terms of artificial intelligence, it's really quite shocking if you think about how much stuff we could not do with AI 5 years ago that we can do now. And I think putting these things together, it's really inspiring. I mean, 13.8 billion years into this universe we're in, here we are realizing that we had not only dramatically underestimated as a species the size of this reality we're in. With your space work, you're shedding more light on all the amazing resources out there. But we've also dramatically underestimated the ability of these children to ultimately understand and shape the world for the better in the future. Right? We thought we were just stuck here in the Stone Age, and there was going to be more Stone Age stuff 500 years later. And we're realizing that the science we learn gives us, it empowers us to really make the future the way we want it and help life flourish like never before. Everything I love about civilization is a product of intelligence. So if we can amplify our intelligence with artificial intelligence and use it to solve the things we're stumped by today even better and faster, then we can ultimately, I think, help life flourish like never before, and not just for the next election cycle, but for billions of years. And not just on this planet, but throughout much of this beautiful universe.
All right. Well, we'll all try to walk out of here with a bounce in our step and some of that optimism in our hearts, at least until dinner time. Thank you very, very much, Natalya, Ayah, Max. Thank you.
That was awesome.